Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of Be Well Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started Be Well Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment or medications if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here. Visit bewelltexas.org.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 254 of the Alamo Auto Podcast, where your UTSA Roadrunners are 1-2 on the season. Pretty bad score differential for these Roadrunners through these last two games. But there's still some good out there. There's still some signs of life and all that. But we're here to break it all down with your UTSA versus UT recap and also a preview of the Houston Christian Huskies as well. I'm your host, Jared Kalmus, joined as always by my co-host, Adrian Mudez. Adrian, it's tough to break down two massive beatdowns in a row, but we got to do it.
Yeah, so that total, the overall point differential here in the last 2 weeks for UTSA is an astounding 105-17. That's an L for the Roadrunners, of course. 105
I wonder how far back do you have to go to have a point differential of, what would that be, like 85 points or something like that across two games?
105 to 17. What's 105 minus 17? It's 88. It's 88 points, Jared. And it's brutal. It's tough. It's the lowest point that this Roadrunners team has experienced, I think, under the entirety of Jeff Traylor's time here. And it's definitely one that they're going to have to reckon with. Although, Jared, that said, I do think they reckoned with it just a little bit against the University of Texas Longhorns last Saturday in Austin. Look, this is a hard one to gauge. You knew you were going up against the best team in the country. You knew it was going to be an absolute smothering. So how do you try to watch or gauge a team that is playing in what you know is going to be a bloodbath and ends up being just that at 56-7? Well, you try to see if they did some things better. And I think they did do a lot of things better, Jared. Not everything. They didn't improve everywhere. But a team that committed 10 penalties in each game during that in the first 2 weeks of the season, week 1 and week 2. Only 3 penalties against UT. Most, I think, happened during the whistle. It wasn't really those between the whistle type of penalties on the dead ball. I think we were just a little bit more disciplined overall. We ran the ball a little bit better. The penalties were down. The offensive line was a lot better. I think up front with the defense was a lot better. So line of scrimmage in general, I think, was a lot better. So I think there's a lot of things, Jared, that these Roadrunners did a lot better this week. Not everywhere. We still had our issues. We still had our issues moving the ball, finding like that real steady momentum where we could just move the ball downfield and continue to find like a rhythm with the offense. Never really happened. Stalled out a lot. Made those mistakes. But that said, Jared, I think there was more good than bad that came out of this game against UT. Would you or wouldn't you agree?
I agree 100%, man. I honestly think it's a huge compliment and like confirmation that Texas really is the best team in the country, that they did legitimately beat UTSA 56-7, but it also feels like UTSA played their best game of the season. And I know it sounds absolutely insane to say that with that final score, but I really believe it's true, and I really believe it's because UT really is that good, right? That first touchdown that they threw, I went back on my film breakdown and broke it down, and Danye was like 3 inches away from either having a strip sack on Quinn Ewers, deflecting the ball, and he potentially could have hit it straight up and intercepted it too. I mean, he was right there. But Quinn got the pass off, and then he threw it to Isaiah Bond, a 5-star former Alabama receiver that just, I mean, he's a freak, dude. He's a freak. He just got not wide open. it was pretty good coverage from, I think that was Jimmy Wyrick on that play. I mean, he saw the break on the end route and came in and put his hand right in the small pocket, the small window where that ball was getting thrown, and Isaiah made a great catch, right? I mean, against non-SEC competition, that play doesn't happen, right? Danya either blows it up, their quarterback throws an incompletion, it gets picked off, Jimmy Wyrick would break it up, right? There's a lot of things going right for UTSA in that play, but Texas had a 5-star quarterback throwing to a 5-star receiver, and they made a 5-star play, you know? So while Texas got 7 points out of that play, you go and you go to conference play and you play like that, you're going to have good things happen, right? So going into this game, that was the key thing that I was looking for, is like, obviously UTSA can't overnight recruit, top 5 recruiting classes on a row and go toe to toe with these guys, but they can control what they can't control, right? They can play with great effort. They can avoid penalties, like you mentioned, they did a good job of. They can clean up their assignments, right? And they can just show a lot of physicality, right? And like, yeah, they can't bulldoze over these guys. They can't outrun these guys, but they can give their best effort and, execute the play as it's called and how it's been practiced and how it's been repped. And I thought they did just that, man. I was very encouraged. They hung tight through the whole game, right? I think you go back, you look at the Texas State film, and you see a lot of periods where it did not look like UTSA was in it to compete, right? They looked like a dog that had been beat, and they didn't play with a lot of pride. And down to the last whistle in DKR, I saw a team that was willing to fight. I saw a team that rallied around their teammates. I saw a team that was, really bringing back that triangle toughness that we've missed, right? And to do that in a massive blowout loss, I think says a lot. That the locker room is still there. I think the character of this team is still there. And, UTSA could, look bad against Houston Christian this week and, start conference play with the loss to ECU. And maybe this stuff all goes out the window. But based off what we saw against the Longhorns, I think there's fair room for optimism. And I ran a Twitter poll on Sunday morning, and it's like, how are you feeling the next day? Are you slightly encouraged? Do you think UTSA still got this? Or do you have no hope? And I think no hope only got like 10% of the vote, right? So I do think the fan base is seeing a lot of the things that we're seeing here as well. I think a lot of people still have a lot of trust in Jeff as the head coach, and there's still a lot of things to be concerned about, to criticize, and all that to be questionable, and that's fair, right? No one that's not a complete homer wouldn't feel the way or ask those questions, but I think you can also be equally realistically optimistic about this team.
So the final numbers on the Twitter poll, this was out of 198 voters. 50%, Jared, voted slightly encouraged, which I think was pretty impressive considering 198. So what is that? That's 99 people voted for slightly encouraged. 15% on no hope left, 23% on we got this. So I guess that would have been the highest level of optimism was we got this, which
and what I said
also, understand we got this is a level above no hope left by 8%. So
right.
So the smallest amount of voters with the least optimism. Pretty good. I think people were pretty encouraged with that.
I think like the we got this vote is like this team can still compete for a conference championship. Is my interpretation of that poll option. 100%. I don't know if everyone who voted 100%. For it thought that, but that's what I figured. Yeah.
There's high confidence in this team if you're selecting we got this, which is almost a quarter of voters, Jared, at 23%. Again, that number. So I think that's the most important thing that people wanted to see. It is the most important thing that people needed to see out of this game was an improved spirit amongst the Roadrunners, a resolve amongst this team to show that they were still going to go out there and fight, that they still had that dog in them, so to speak, and stand by that triangle of toughness, show that they were going to give 100% effort on every single play, because it's not necessarily something that we saw at Texas State. I think we saw it against UT Austin. So, Jared, as far as what we saw really get better, let's kind of go through our line items with what we saw get better and what we saw didn't improve. so much.
Hey, real
I
quick,
think first
before,
thing.
I got a quick question before we get into that.
Okay.
Do you agree this is by far the best team UTSA's ever faced in program history, Texas? I think they are.
I think it's fair.
And they were missing a lot of players, right? Like their starting quarterback only played like the first half of the first quarter or something like that. They were down to their fourth string running back. They had a player or two missing on defense, and they still looked incredible.
So I have
Sarkisian's a great play caller. That certainly helps too.
I have a counter question. I have a question for your question.
Okay.
Regardless of whether or not it's the best team UTSA has ever played, is it the most better than UTSA team that UTSA has ever played?
Better, like the biggest gap between UTSA's ability and the opponent?
Correct.
Okay, that I would say no, actually, because I think when UTSA was playing those ranked Oklahoma State teams, like at the end of the Coker era, that to me was the biggest gap, because we were like pretty much an FCS team at that point in time, and that team those Oklahoma State teams were ranked in the top 15. So that to me was the biggest gap. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to look back at this game and like give UTSA like an extra 9 points that they could have got off like field goals and some conversion attempts, and then you take away pick six, and what that makes the final score would be like, 49-18 or something like that. And it's like not as ugly.
This is the right answer, Jared. I think this would be like the counter answer that a lot of people would have just on your first question. Is this the best team? I think a lot of people would point back to those Coker years and the Oklahoma State teams. And this is the right sequence. I think this UT team is absolutely the best. There's no question about it. They just beat the defending national champions, for Pete's sake. And then the team that was the team that was the furthest ahead, the team that was the most better than, I think is how I phrased it, than UTSA was those OSU teams, those Cowboys teams of the Coker era. Because UTSA just wasn't even on that playing field quite yet. And I don't even know that I think this UT team might even break into the 60s against the teams of the early 20 teams UTSA. So yeah, I think that would be my agreement with you, Jared. I think I've seen that question get floated around. I think that was people's answer, and so that's just my differentiator between those two different categories.
Tennessee was really good last year too.
Yeah. Tennessee is way up there, and they shouldn't be discounted. But this UT team probably better.
Yeah. I'm really glad that we can bring the listeners great sound bites like this team is most better than. So, that's what the people are looking for. We got away with words, man.
Unbelievably well.
Most grammatically correct UTSA podcast, 12 years running or whatever.
After the absolute molly-whopping from Texas State, the worst game in UTSA history, what areas were most better than last week against Texas State? What areas were most better than against Texas?
Okay, I would say most better than was just the effort, right? I mean, like, I kind of went on this whole spiel. I don't want to repeat myself, but it just looked like a team that really cared against Texas, a team that wasn't really fazed by the talent differential, was not fazed by the score differential, was not fazed by the environment, right? I mean, UFCU Stadium was a great environment, right? But it can't hold a candle to DKR. DKR was rocking. I mean, the cannon going off, the light show, 100,000 fans. They weren't fazed, right? And I don't know how much we're going to talk about Owen. It's hard to evaluate him off of the talent gap there. But he looked pretty comfortable there. He did not look like some little redshirt sophomore that had never played in that kind of environment before. Like, he made his fair share of mistakes, obviously. But I think it was more just, of the speed of the game than like the environment itself. So I saw a team that was locked in, and I didn't see it at all against Texas State. So I don't think that was like the thing that impressed me the most or the thing that was the best, but it was most better than Texas State.
Oh, 100%. Yes. Very, very well said, Jared. It's easy for a team to go into a game that they know they're going to get their butts whooped in after a complete blowout to your rival at that the week prior and just lay down. I mean, there was this UTSA team had nothing to play for against Texas except for the sake of playing itself and having a little bit of attitude and having a little bit of chip on your shoulder and deciding whether or not you were going to take this 2024 campaign seriously, even though you lost to Texas State. And this is a whole big issue and topic of discussion that I want to get into later, Jared, but maybe it's just time to get into it now because we're talking about this game and you're talking about the difference in energy. I think there's big picture ramifications to the difference in effort we saw from the Roadrunners and that little bit of resolve that we saw from the Roadrunners, that it speaks waves. It goes wavelengths. It has a domino effect, a butterfly effect, if you will. But I think, there's a little bit of a mistake. There's a little bit of a violation of culture pillars that occurs with this team in talking about college football playoff with a brand spanking new depth chart. And I think that goes by way of players, by staff, by fans, and maybe by pundits a little bit too. But it's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of crazy to expect a team to have an all-new starting quarterback, all-new offensive line to a degree, a center of wide receivers, a new defensive secondary. I mean, you've got this whole new depth chart, a whole new 2 deep. And to expect that, you're just going to walk your way through a 2024 season based off of the previous year's success. Look, I think it's fine to have it in your sights and to want that ultimate goal, but I think we were also just maybe just a little too open about it, a little too confident about it. I think Traylor's earlier messaging, if we go back to conference media days, he had a much different sort of message. He was also saying, we're living on the backs of ghosts. We're living on the backs of what we did 2 years ago and last season. We're not the same team. And now he's got and that kind of shifted rather quickly to college football playoff. We're going to be ready for September. We're going to wreck September. And it's an easy thing to break a team's spirit when they have it instilled in their head. This is the goal that we want, our ultimate goal. And to now think you lost your ultimate goal in week 2 and getting blown out to your rival, it's hard to still hold on to that. They go out against Texas. They clearly have reset their focus. Maybe there's been talks of pivoting that goal, shifting those goalposts. I'd imagine there was. Whatever it was, though, Jared, it's a much more together team than what we saw. And dude, it's easy to expect them to go out there and lay down after, what could be viewed as losing your ultimate goal for the 2024 season so early on. And that's all I want to say.
Let's save the preseason playoff expectation discussion for maybe end of the season recap. I definitely want to revisit that. I think it's a fascinating point. To get back to breaking down what was most better than, right? They're most improved. I thought UTSA's run game was what impressed me the most. And this is a run game that was pretty much non-existent the first 2 weeks of the season. They couldn't really run the ball very well against Kennesaw State. I don't remember any big runs they had in that game. And I still feel like Kennesaw was pretty good and tackling in the secondary, which helped. But they definitely didn't run at all against Texas State either. And then to come out and look okay running the ball against a very, very strong Texas defense that's loaded with NFL talent, all in that front seven, really surprised me. Really, really surprised me. I thought they would look better, but they looked even better than I expected, right? For, I think, the first 3 quarters, they were averaging over 4 yards a carry in the rushing attack, which was mind-blowing. But they just looked confident. They looked physical. The patience from the running backs wasn't as good as it could have been, but it was enough to let some holes develop. And I think it's a mix of things. I think part of it is a big part of it is getting Mekhi Hart back at tackle. Bentley Tatafu was out for Texas State. You got him back as well. But I would attribute to more than that. I thought it was better unison. I've really been picking on CJ James, the new starting center transfer from New Mexico, a lot in my film breakdowns. And he had his mistakes against Texas as well. But he was vastly improved against the Longhorns, right? Just saw a lot better cohesion, less missed blocks, missed assignments. Overall, it's just across the board, it was a huge improvement. It's the first time all year that I've seen UTSA offensive linemen blocking at the second level, right? So whether they're pushing a defensive lineman back 3 yards and block, kind of nudging the linebacker, or getting up to the second level, with like a chip block or a pull block or whatever. But I saw a lot of it. I saw a lot of offensive linemen getting to linebackers, and that's how you turn those 3 or 4 yard carries into 6 or 8 yard carries, or potentially more if you can make a man miss. So that was super encouraging. Obviously, we saw the big touchdown run from Robert Henry. UTSA ran counter perfectly. They look so good doing it, and it's like, man, where has that been? Right? UTSA used to be able to do this easily. They used to have 3 running backs that could take it to the house. You get, what's the saying? A head on a hat or hat on a head or whatever they say, and just get every man picked up in your run block. And then you just give the running back a little bit of space, and he makes one guy miss. One guy takes a bad ankle. He's off to the races. That used to be the standard for UTSA. Under Jeff Traylor, they've never really been 4 yards in a cloud of dust running attack, right? They'll be like a little bit slower, right? They'll kind of wear you down, 2 yard gain, 3 yard gain. And then eventually you break that big one, right? And, that goes back to once Nasir McCormick was in the backfield. So I thought this was the first step to get back to where that's always should have been. And Houston Christian's got a really poor run defense. So I think what they were able to put on film against the Longhorns is going to be motivational for them. I think it's going to help them regain their confidence. And I think they're really going to break out with a nice rushing attack this week to feel good about that run game heading into conference play.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you hit on it right there at the beginning when you said we hadn't really seen any big run plays from this group all season long. And all 3 of your big running backs, Robert Henry, Kavorian Barnes, Rocco Griffin, all breakout on long carries. Kavorian Barnes with a 10-yard run, Rocco Griffin with a 17-yard run, Robert Henry with the 53-yard touchdown run, UTSA's sole touchdown of the day. With that combined, all of a sudden now you've got these big moments from your running backs that are moving the chains. They're big plays, they're decisive plays, and they're really critical to getting that momentum happening for an offense whenever you can rely on your running back to go and get those yards that you need. Now, a lot of times throughout this game, we also saw the running backs not be able to pick up some of those yards on second or third down or whatever it was. But that was just more so of what we were talking about earlier with the talent differential. I think this was a massively better day from our running backs. I think they saw the field better. And it's just that little bit of difference that the offense being able to move up to that second level makes for a running back, just having another half a yard to work with, to get around, to make a decision, another split second to make a decision on. And because all of a sudden, a little bit better play from the offensive line, I think that butterfly effect of much, much better play from your running backs, a little bit better from your offensive line, much better from running backs. And I think you could even say it was more than a little bit better. It was much better from your offensive line. And it's a big, big difference, I think, especially if you look at them doing it versus a UT offensive line against them doing it versus an AAC offensive line, UTSA's actual opponents that we'll be seeing in the next 2 weeks and so on through the season. Yeah, if we can block at that level, I think we're going to be just fine moving the ball on the ground. One thing, though, Jared, we still saw 6 running backs get out there and touch the ball. This is a strange thing. We've kind of seen this throughout the season now from Jeff Traylor's offense. He's getting all of the running backs involved. I also, you had a game against Texas State and against Texas where the point differential eclipsed that of 30 points. And so you want to get guys snaps. I understand that. But that hasn't been really necessarily the case with all of this running back by committee happening. Some of these guys are getting snaps still during minutes of significance throughout these last 2 games before the score differential got that big. I think right now it's more important getting our 3 most important running backs, Robert Henry, Kavorian Barnes, and Rocco Griffin. 100% of the snaps can be dispersed to those 3 guys, I think, if not 95% of. But we're seeing a lot of Will Henderson getting the ball. We're seeing Brandon High get the ball. Bryson Donald get the ball. They're all getting snaps out of the backfield. It just seems like they should be going to the other three guys.
So High and Donald definitely didn't get any touches until this game was way out of hand, right? So I'll park those two. I wonder if like Will Henderson taking his first touch to the house was like a double-edged sword, because like that was awesome. He's a very electric player, but I do wonder if they're kind of force feeding him a little bit, right? There was one drive he came in, I think he got 3 touches in a row, including one on 4th down. And it's just, I mean, everyone knows what to expect when he's on the field, right? He's a slider guy, but he's very electric, very fast. He's going to go, run to the sideline and try to beat you with speed on the edge, right? Defenses know what to expect. So I think they probably need to get a little bit more creative on how they're going to use Will Henderson, if they're going to use him. But I do share your concern that like those are snaps that I think are preventing Kavorian and like Rocco from getting into the groove, right? I think that's just one more opportunity where those guys don't break off that 20-yard run. That's going to kind of get their confidence back and get them back into the flow of the offense a little bit. So I definitely want to see that running back rotation shrink, but it would also really help for UTSA to play a 1 or 2 score contest where we can really see what the strategy is for that room, because they haven't really played like a normal game this year. They played a game against an FCS call-up that was not expected to be all that competitive and ended up being. So, I think the rotation strategy for that was kind of shifted a little bit, and then you got 2 blowouts, right? So we're probably still not going to see a tight rotation this week, because I think UTSA should win pretty handily. But it'll be interesting, when UTSA goes into ECU, that's going to be a very close game. That's great defense they have in Greenville. So I'll have a close eye on that.
Jared, before we speak on the defense, do you want to talk or highlight anyone in particular on the offensive line that had some better games today? In particular,
CJ back. He's so back, dude.
Mekhi Hart and Vinley Tatafu both back. CJ James had a turnaround day. I mean, it's a completely different looking unit with Mekhi Hart.
It's crazy how once they have the 5 starters that were probably expected to be the starters heading into the season all together, they suddenly learn how to run the ball. They only gave up 3 sacks too. Pass protection was pretty good. I mean, when you look at what Texas has, rushing the passer, I thought they did a pretty good job of keeping Owen pretty sound in the pocket back there. So that was encouraging. But yeah, Mekhi Hart, man, we say it all the time. When he's healthy, he's as much of a weapon for this offense as any skill position player. I mean, his ability to run in space, to give pancake blocks. I mean, it was just great to see him out there moving around again. It's been a long time since we've really seen him, playing close to 100%. So that was just really exciting. As someone who loves to watch offensive line play, chef's kiss.
Only 3 sacks allowed, 0 from former Roadrunner Trey Moore.
None of the season still for him.
Yeah, none of the season. Did not happen against UTSA. There is a little bit of silver lining, little Easter egg fact that you can take out of this game. Jared, yeah, Mekhi Hart, not the only guy back. I think you may have mentioned it earlier, but Danye Taylor back. A pregame defensive huddle rallies around Danye Taylor. He is the most vocal one as far as captains go on that defense. Jeff Traylor spoke about it. They asked Jeff Traylor about, vocal leadership on that defense. And Traylor essentially said Danye's got enough for everybody. He said, we're finding our word count thanks to Danye Taylor. So it's...
Wait, sorry, what he said, finding our word count? Is that what he said?
He said we are fine on our word count. Whenever, I think it was Greg Luca of the San Antonio Express News, friend of the podcast, that had asked, some of the guys that are defensive leaders have been open about, not being super vocal. And Traylor said, Danye's got enough, vocals for everybody. We're fine on our word count.
Okay.
And I think that's
some of those words were directed at Steve Sarkisian. He was getting into it with Steve on the sideline. Did you see that?
You saw the big energy return. I think it's true. I think it's definitely true that Danye is the vocal leader and he's got the energy leader that rallies on this team. But yes, he gets into it with Steve Sarkisian. And it's not just Danye mouthing off to Steve Sarkisian post whistle, but Sarkisian snaps back at him, breaks composure, and gets into it with Donye. It's fantastic. There's finger pointing. There's a little bit of, dare I say, extracurriculars going on between coach and player right there. A beautiful sight. I hope there's like some good still photos of that. Yeah, it's a great stuff. Great stuff.
Well, man, it's great to have Donye back. You know, I think right now you could probably argue that Mekhi Hart and Donye Taylor might be the best player on each side of the ball, and both guys were finally back and playing a lot of snaps this week, and it made a big difference. Donye had an instant impact, man. Just all over the field, as always. You know, his quickness is huge, but I think it's just football IQ, right? Having anticipation of where the ball's going to go. Like if he's coming off the blitz, he's really good about like reading the quarterback's eyes as he's coming down and looking like, when is the pass going to come out? Where is the quarterback going to throw based off his arm slot delivery? And then he'll jump up and put his hands right there to try to deflect the pass. He had a sack. He had a huge hit. I think that was on Arch. He's a stud, man. He just makes his defense so much better. And I feel like even on plays where he didn't get a tackle, he still caused the offense to do something to take away their first option, to adjust where they were going to run to or something like that. He's just a force on the defensive side.
I think you could definitely see more intensity from this UTSA defense up front. And yeah, I think you got to credit a lot of that to Donye Taylor. But yeah, there was more effort. There was more aggression. I think we really dominated up front on defense. Well, I shouldn't say dominated, but we looked a hell of a lot better. We had a lot of energy up front on defense. And
Adrian, if they play like that against a G5 offense, they will dominate. Because I mean, they did not get pushed around at all.
Very, very physical. Very, very physical.
You saw Jamal Ligon, Martavius French playing in the backfield, meeting the ball, carry the line of scrimmage, playing with a good pad level, delivering a hit. You saw Brevin Randall out there, you know, coming downfield on like a green dog blitz, right? So it means like the play call wasn't a blitz, but he just like read the play. It was like, well, I'm gonna go get the quarterback, right? If I don't have anyone to cover. A lot of physicality from that group. They looked really good. Didn't see Kendrick Blackshire do a whole lot, but he was out there playing as well.
Martavius French deserves a shout out. He led the day.
He's awesome.
With 7 tackles on the game and getting there in the backfield, disrupting a lot of stuff.
The Alamo Audible film breakdown on Patreon. Yep.
Big effort from Martavius French. Fantastic. Even Jeff Traylor, I think, spoke about him in the post-game presser, or maybe it was earlier this week, talking about, you know, missed a tackle, got back up, and ended up making the tackle on the same play. And Martavius was really all over the place. It doesn't surprise me. I don't know what play it was, but he was all over the place. It doesn't surprise me at all. You know, all that said about the defensive up front, Jared, Jeff Traylor also said that we took a massive step backwards on the defensive secondary. Looked like 2 to 3 years ago, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. Ken Robinson was missing. We know his vocal leadership is a big factor. He's a captain back there, but he said Jeff Traylor said he's very disappointed that they turned so many guys loose again. But him to say we took a step backwards in our secondary, we looked like 2 or 3 years ago, was very, very concerning. Jared, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would think so. I think a lot of it, too, is Texas being really good and finding that crease in the zone and putting the ball there for sure. You know, I do wonder if Ken Robinson was out there, how much does that really change things? Probably takes away a few of those blown coverages, but you know, I think it kind of is what it is. But yeah, I think Robinson is sorely missed. It sounds like he may be out for a while, which is unfortunate. But, you know, I think Jimmy Wyrick will fill in nicely there. I think he's a really smart player. He's going to learn that defense really quick. And he's played pretty well this year. So I think they'll be okay. You know, Houston Christian likes to attack medium depth zone as well, just like Texas had a lot of success doing. So it'll be interesting to get that test again and see if they can show some improvement there. But, you know, just given the fact that we haven't seen it in several years and it just popped up in this game, first game without Ken Robinson, I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to give him a chance to fix it before I get too concerned. Because, like, we don't know when Ken got hurt. Like, was he out all week at practice and Wyrick wasn't really running with the ones all that much, preparing as if he was a starter? I think how they look against Houston Christian this week will will matter because, like, the talent difference won't change too much as far as like, are you going to have busted coverage or not, right? Like all their receivers are running, at least a 4.6 or whatever, So if it's still a problem this week, I think it'll still show up.
Well, I would agree with you. I think it was mostly talent differential there. However, it was bad, and of course missing Ken Robinson, but it was bad. It did look a little bit ugly. It was Texas, man. They're the best team in the country. It is what it is. I thought, overall UTSA played a fantastic day. Shout out to Owen. 21 for 29. I don't know what else you could really expect from the guy to do up there. He was under a hell of a lot of stress, but he did better, I think, with his pocket management. Only got sacked 3 times. Like we said, good day by the offensive line. However, Owen McCown was, still fighting off a lot of pressure there.
Sure.
Was able to make some things happen. 21 for 29, no interceptions. I mean, yeah, no touchdowns, but the guy essentially didn't make any mistakes against Texas. I think he played a hell of a good game.
I don't know if he had any throws that were even close to getting picked off either. He was pretty safe with the football. I mean, if anything, maybe he should have taken some more risk. Yeah,
maybe so, but I think he was pretty smart with the football, and he got asked to do a lot. I don't think he got very much help. I still think it was a tough day for his receivers getting open, and we just haven't seen UTSA's receivers get open very well throughout the entire first 3 weeks of the season. And so I think more than anything, that's made it hard for Owen to take shots.
I think play design is a problem as well. I've started to notice a lot of plays where receivers are kind of ending their routes in the middle of the field and just kind of standing there. Would like to see those continue. There's a time and a place for that, but to have like 2 guys both doing it in the middle of the field is usually not super conductive to success.
Got to improvise out there. Got to be able to improvise at the end of that route. Yeah.
Right. There was like 1/3 or 4th down conversion. I think it was a 4th down conversion that Owen stepped up in the pocket, and like Willie McCoy was probably like 12 yards deep, and then Oscar was like 6 yards deep, and they were like right on top of each other, and both of them were just standing still. Not a great look. So I think they'll need to change some things on offense. We have a lot of speed at that receiver position, but they haven't shown the ability to like kind of win those one-on-one jump balls just yet. There have been some where they won them and then dropped the pass. There's been times where the pass was a little bit off and it went out of bounds. I've seen the receivers go out of bounds too, which is concerning. So yeah, I don't know. I think they're going to have to change the game plan a little bit to get the receivers more involved.
Jared, Jeff Traylor did say this week during his interviews, quote, "Gotta get JT back. Gotta get Amador back at wide receiver." We know Amador had a slight little hamstring ding, and he's been on the depth chart. And he's gotten in and out, but he has not said anything of the sort like this in reference to JT Clark since last season. It has always been very, very dismissive when it comes to what his status is. He wasn't even asked about JT Clark's status. He was actually talking about having Donye back and how important that was for the defensive energy. And then he said, "Got to get JT back." But it's not something that he would say, especially unprompted, if he didn't feel good about JT coming back, which is all speculative for me to say. However, I found it extremely surprising, very eyebrow-raising whenever Jeff Traylor said that earlier this week. He just slid it into one of his answers, like halfway through, just like that one little half sentence, "Got to get JT back a wide receiver." And I was like, what did he just say? Is JT looking like he's going to come back? So I'm just putting that out there. I'm just putting that out there that I heard him say it, and he said it, and that was said. So
I think JT is getting pretty close, right? He's going through warm-ups with the team. I've seen clips of him at practice, right? So I think he's getting there.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see him in the next couple of weeks. I really do.
Insane.
What he's going to look like when he's out there, who knows? But
this team needs it so bad. You got to think this team needs it so bad, just from his leadership, his captainship, and just the potential threat that he is. I mean, how are you not going to put one of your best defensive backs on JT Clark?
Yeah. But Adrian, as a follow-up, does it make you concerned about this wide receiver room that, like, in a question not even about the receivers, that Jeff went out of his way to say we need these two injured guys back, and one of them hasn't played in 2 years, and we need them desperately? Like,
I think
I
I
don't
think
know if
we've
they like
expressed
what
that
they've
we've
got
had.
right now.
I think we've expressed that what we've seen from the wide receivers is unsatisfactory. Maybe we haven't said it in those words, but we've said it indirectly on this podcast, talking about Owen failing to get open targets. That's because the wide receivers are not getting open, and it's happened every single week. It happened against Kennesaw State, against Texas State, against Texas. The wide receivers just do not look great right now. There's been times where Owen has had the time to throw, and you can just tell he's in the pocket going through his reads and all out of options, all out of luck. There's no one to throw the ball to. Jared, you just gave an example of two wide receivers or a wide receiver and a tight end standing still at the end of their routes, and ball still in quarterback's hands. It's a very dysfunctional room right now. They're not a threat. They're not getting open. They're not giving us any big play opportunities. They're not moving the sticks very well. We've actually seen several mistakes from several guys. It's not just one guy that's dropped some passes. We've seen all the guys actually drop some passes at this point. Passes of consequence on first downs and potential touchdowns. And it just it's a dysfunctional position group. You got to get a guy like JT Clark back in there to serve a little bit of leadership, a little bit of captainship in there. And I don't know, Jared, is it a lack of experience? Maybe. These guys have to go through some growing pains. Yes, maybe. But I expected this room to be much more talented. And we lost a lot too at the position. I think that makes another big difference to the naked eye. You had such a good wide receiver in the last 3 years at UTSA for Frank Harrison. Owen, unfortunately, inherited zero of it. His first full season as UTSA starting quarterback. And that's the fact of the matter. So
Devin was really good last year. He's been good this year. So I
yeah,
don't,
but he's tasked with a hell of a lot more this year, Jared. And I just think, that cerebrally probably has something on these guys. But yeah, they just haven't gotten it done. They haven't,
I'm
they
sure
haven't
he's like
gotten
getting bracketed more by safeties.
Haven't gotten near getting it done. We just spoke about a great season from UTSA, or I'm sorry, a great game from UTSA's running backs this week against Texas, and how the three guys that we expected to be good all played better from good offensive line play. But we haven't really seen that from this wide receiver, and we haven't had a day where we said, man, UTSA's wide receivers looked great today. We haven't had it. I would say we haven't gotten close to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
They could have saved some of these games. They could have saved some of these games, or at least some of these point differentials the last 2 weeks. The wideouts could have single-handedly saved.
It's been disappointing that J.J. Sparkman hasn't been a factor in the offense at all. He plays a lot. He blocks well, but just doesn't seem to be getting open. And I don't know, maybe like they just haven't had the chance to get him in one-on-one and throw that jump ball up to him that, we kind of expect him to go up and get. So I don't know. I mean, if where we're at with the offense is waiting for Amador and JT to come back, I'm not feeling great.
Jared, most people would say we've spent entirely too much time on a 56-7 loss, but we'd be remiss to not also talk about place kicking operations for UTSA has been horrible. Field goal kicking has not looked good at all. We've had 3 weeks of just botched place kicking from UTSA. This is the difference versus winning games and losing games, especially when it comes to conference play against an opponent that is going to be level-headed with you. It all comes down to place kicking. We've seen it separate UTSA several times over the years of UTSA's conference championships. Dude, it's looking piss poor right now. UTSA cannot buy a field goal to save their lives. Jeff Traylor's pointed to operations. I'm not really sure what he means by that. He says we need to get set up earlier. We need to make the call earlier.
Well,
he's
like,
you
keep in mind, right? It's not always automatic that you're going to kick the field goal, right? Like you're in range, but it's 4th and 3. You might go for it, right? So like you have to have the guys on the sideline ready to go, and then the call from the head coach comes, we're kicking. Then you got to get those guys out on the field. You got to get the offense out. You got to get set. You got to snap the ball. You got to hold the ball. You got to kick the ball, right? So there's a lot of steps there that can go awry, right? The kicker's got to take his steps backwards and measure out the distance and get set before the snap, right? There's a lot that goes into it. You're usually not doing like just HUD snap also, right? Because like you don't want to allow the defense to jump the snap and go and block it. So that's when he says operations, that just means like stuff is happening off the field as well to prepare to come on the field and kick.
Correct. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And which he pointed to because he kept saying, we got to get better than that. I got to get better at that. Steph's got to get better at that.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, Jared, regardless of operations or not, Chase Allen is 1 for 5 on the year. That is 20%.
Oh my gosh, dude.
That is 20% kicking field goals, 20% made, 1 for 5. That's 0 for 2 against Kennesaw State, 1 make against Texas State, 0 for 2 against the University of Texas.
I hope that Allen is like playing through an injury right now, and he's just not just like cooked. That's super concerning.
It's first year. It's a first year with a new deep snapper with long snapper. I'm sorry, holder.
Oh, I don't think so. New holder, yeah.
Holder, not deep snapper, not long snapper. Pardon me. Holder, new holder, which I believe is Cade Collinback. No,
Collinback is the deep snapper. Sure. He's been great.
Collinback is deep snapper.
The holder is new. They have Cale Hogan.
Cale Hogan, I had a big step. I had it backwards.
Yeah,
that's right. Cale Hogan.
I've read
the
several
new holder.
Different people online say that the holds are bad. It's super hard to see from a TV broadcast, but from what I've been able to tell, I haven't noticed anything wrong with the holds. I don't know. It's not their
Jeff Traylor did mention Cale by name. He said Cale's learning. He's a new freshman, a new holder. He's a freshman. There's a learning curve there, and he's going through some growing pains. Traylor said that much about Cale. So there's a little bit there. There, so we won't point the finger entirely at Chase Allen, but the fact remains, this is a team that cannot buy a field goal. A special teams either cannot buy a field goal to save their life right now, or 20%.
They can't buy a field goal
3 weeks,
and they can't get into the end zone. Oh my gosh! I really thought that UTSA ice throwing kicker, and I was losing it. I was like,
yeah, oh yeah,
Jeff, what are you doing? And then they said after the game that there was going to be a delay game if they didn't call the penalty.
Operations goes back to those operations things, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, maybe it was a deal where it took 5 seconds too long to decide to kick it. It took 5 seconds too long to go find Tate and let him know he's going to cook. It took 5 seconds too long to get the whole unit out there and add all that up and delay game. But
sure,
it's got to be better. It's got to be more crisp than that.
Got to be tighter. It's got to be tighter. Overall, Jared, I'm much happier with the way the Roadrunners looked against Texas than they did against Texas State. And look, we've got a layup that we're about to talk about against Houston Christian, and then you go against ECU, and if UTSA goes 1-0 in conference and they're 3-2 in 2 weeks, all is forgiven, Jared, and no one remembers this point right now. We'll have to see.
The hype train is off the rails, whether you beat ECU or not.
Sure, that is very much true. Alamo Dome attendance is shot after a 49-10 loss against Texas State.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Your hype train is gone. But as far as successful season versus off the rails season, and I mean the difference between fighting for 500 versus looking like you're going to be competitive in the AAC for a play into a championship appearance, that rests on what we see in the conference opener against ECU. And so, you've got one more game to tighten things up, right? But if this team competes, Jared, for a conference championship game appearance, is a tremendous turnaround from what we've seen these last 2 weeks. And I think to go even further back, we talked about preseason expectations a little bit earlier, would have been astounding preseason expectations for this team in itself. forget college football playoff, but just for a new quarterback and a new depth chart to come in and to play for a conference championship game is really, really impressive and a really, really large, tall order to ask. So, yeah, man, I think there's still plenty in front of UTSA despite how bad the last 2 weeks went, and hype train might be out the door. However, successful season is not.
All right, my dog is going nuts. I'm going to try to get through these Patreon shout-outs without too much background noise. Everyone complaining about my dog in the podcast. I get it. I hear you. I'm sorry. I'm doing my best. I do want to say thanks to a new Patreon subscriber. Shout out to Brian Zamora for joining Patreon at the Insider tier this week. Hope you guys have been enjoying all the great content over there. The bonus episodes, the film breakdowns, the instant reactions. Great content, great coverage over there. Go check us out. Our bonus episode this week will definitely be one to look forward to. We're going to talk about the Pac-12 expansion, where UTSA sits and all that, what I'm hearing from people. So tune in. It's going to be a good one. Thank you, as always, to our Board of Trustees members on Patreon. That includes Digiteek, John Otwell, Garen and Ruben represent the UTSA Burger Gang Tailgate, Ray Redding and Meet Me Apparel, Brandon Grill and the Grill Realty Group, Andy Elizada and Proficient Business Solutions, Ian McClendon and Secret LLC, Ryan Squares, Waterman Construction, Javon Townsend, President of the DFW chapter of the UTSA Alumni Association, UTSA Annual Giving, Artisan Vapor and CBD, and Wayne Gonzalez and the Runners Rising Project. So we'll hit you guys with a brief Cumbia break, and we'll be back shortly to talk about the Houston Christian Huskies. All right, everyone, welcome back from the Cumbia break. We're here to talk about the Houston Christian Huskies, the artist formerly known as Houston Baptist. I understand they rebranded from Houston Baptist to Houston Christian to try to be more appealing to non-Baptist students. So, interesting. I don't know. I didn't realize it was such a big turnoff to be a Baptist school, but I guess some people had a problem with it. I don't know. Has that held back Baylor to be a Baptist school? Is anyone no, I'm not going to go to Baylor because I'm Methodist? Do people do that? I don't know.
I'm just glad that they held on to the Huskies name. I'm pretty sure whenever you're going down South Houston, is it South 288? Or is it 59? I think it's 288, 59. 59 South, I believe the marquee sign still says HBU, Jared, not HCU. I could be wrong, but I know
they have the gym as right on 59 right there, and they finally just changed it to be Houston Christian in the last month or two. Because I drive that way all the time because that's the way home to Victoria for me. So, I go once a month, once every 2 months, and it's just been driving me insane that it still said Houston Baptist on there. So that, at least that one's finally changed. The rest of campus, probably not. It's very recent.
However much money the institution spent to rebrand and rename the entire university versus what that money probably could have gone into that university could probably greatly use, greatly needs. Yeah, probably not the best allocation of funds.
Did you know that every year one HCU student gets to be the official Husky handler and lives with the Husky in an on-campus apartment?
I did not know that. That is incredible.
Yeah, pretty sick.
Wow.
Anyways, Houston Christian is 1-2 on the year. They've had an interesting schedule. They have played two opponents that vastly out-talent them. One being SMU, the other being Tarleton State, which is one of the better teams in the FCS. Their third opponent was a school called Louisiana. I gotta look this up. Louisiana Christian. I had never seen or heard of them in my life. They have an undergrad enrollment of 832 students. So if you've got 80 football players on your roster, that means 1/10 of the school is a football player. If you're sitting in class and you got 10 seats in a row, there's a football player in every row of your class. That's mind-boggling to me. NAIA, so they're not even Division II. That's two, arguably 3 whole divisions down from where HCU normally competes. So they haven't had a really good measuring stick. you don't really expect them to compete with Tarleton. Since Tarleton's like aiming to move up to FBS, they've recruited pretty well. The results have been lopsided. They lost to SMU 50-97. They lost to Tarleton State 35-18, so semi-respectable. Houston Christian had a score at the end to make it interesting. And then Houston Christian, they beat 70-7. So pretty wild year. Not too sure what to take away from all of that. But Houston Christian did have a really good season last season. They had a new head coach. I think he led them to like the first winning season in program history. I think I read that. That sounds hard to believe. I don't know.
It was
maybe the first winning season in a while, but they did go to the playoffs, I think.
It was the Huskies. It was the Huskies over Louisiana Christian. Houston Christian beat Louisiana Christian 70-7.
Yeah.
And it was the Huskies' single game scoring record, Jared. It was a
I would hope
single
so.
game program record. And it was also head football coach Jason Bachtel's very first win as the new head coach of the Houston Christian Huskies. So, yeah, pretty major stuff for HCU last week to bounce back from those 2 losses.
Yeah, I forgot their last head coach's name, but that guy came in, won a bunch of games, and left immediately. And it's not like he got some crazy promotion and he's like, the OC at Bama now, or he moved up to be an FBS head coach. No, he went to be the head coach at Campbell University, which I'm sure is a step up, but that's pretty bleak for HCU that you would lose your head coach after 1 year.
Braxton Harris? Was Braxton Harris?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We went 5-5. Yeah, just the 2023 season. That was it, and then bailed.
Right. So Jason Bachtel was the offensive coordinator for them last year, and they said, hey, if we're going to lose our head coach after 1 year, we're damn sure not going to lose the offensive coordinator alongside. So they kept Bachtel. They ran him back, and they have some continuity there. I'm not sure how much of the staff he kept together. They got some really, really young dudes on their staff, but they also have like some old head vets as well. So work in progress for sure. One thing that stood out to me is they have 17 FBS transfers on their roster, right? So they're doing a pretty good job of working the portal, just the way you would expect for an FCS program in Dallas and Houston and San Antonio, or to work it, right? You're gonna have a lot of those guys that come back home. And have 17 FBS transfers on your roster. The FCS level, you only get like 53 scholarships or something like that. So that's, north of 20% of your scholarships are going to FBS bounce back kind of guys. Last recruiting cycle, they had the best recruiting class in the FCS. So the overall talent of the roster is not really there where they would be, competing for, a Southland Conference championship or anything like that. But they're making good momentum in that direction, and they do have some pretty good players on this team.
Okay. Wow. That is pretty impressive work to go in and get that many guys out of the transfer portal.
Yeah, and they're from all
I wonder how many of those FBS transfers, expect to go down to FCS to a Houston Christian whenever they enter the portal. Was that something that they're looking to do and just play anywhere? Such an interesting dynamic to me.
Right. Yeah, I think it was a mix, right? There were some guys that, HCU is like their third or their fourth school. I saw one guy, like he went from Washington straight to HCU, and I can't imagine that was his plan when he went to the portal. So I think it's just a mix, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
what are some of the key pieces? Yeah,
for them on offense, they had 2 FBS transfer quarterbacks that lost a position battle to a redshirt freshman from Alice, Texas. It's fascinating. Guy's name is Cutter Stewart. So he's a highly decorated quarterback. I think I read that he was like top 10 in like total passing yards in the state of Texas, passing touchdowns thrown. Really illustrious career for him down in Alice. But he struggled, right? You can see that he's got some talent. He's got some building blocks there. But there's not a whole lot of help around him, right? He definitely panics under duress quite a bit. And he does a pretty good job, I think, of hitting on those medium depth routes, kind of like those 15-yard routes. His deep ball is not there, though, and they want to throw it deep, right? There's a lot of plays where they call for that fade route. They've got their receiver out there in one-on-one, and the ball just does not get there. So You don't see a lot of opposing defenses really showing him a lot of respect with like 2 high safeties or 3 high safeties. I think UTSA, it'll probably be the same. I think they'll probably bring, that a boundary safety down, fairly close to the line of scrimmage and kind of help defend those short, medium routes. But he's a good athlete, right? I think he's a solid quarterback. He's still developing. He's still really young. It's going to be a really tough assignment for him, going up against UTSA in the Alamo Dome. But he's a solid FCS quarterback for them, and it'd be cool to see how he develops. I think in 2 years he could be a pretty good player for them. As far as their offense goes overall, they are super wide splits. That is like the first thing that popped out to me as soon as I watched one of their games this year. Is they're going to have probably a wide receiver on both sidelines, right? And when you got a quarterback that doesn't have a super strong arm, it can be tough to really execute that offense really well. But that's their goal. Their goal is to create a lot of open space, right? So that if you hit that kind of slot receiver, he's got that extra 5 yards of buffer on either side that he can try to make a guy miss and cut up field. And in theory, at least, it helps the run game out too to stretch that defense out wide. I just don't think they really do the most of taking advantage of those splits because they have a hard time just getting the ball all the way across the field like that. So that is one thing to watch for. It might look a little bit different than what you're used to seeing. Because it's just a lot of open space, right? So you might look at it and be like, wow, we're playing really soft coverage here, or why are we so far away from the tackle box, right? But you just have to when they're split out that wide. So it's going to be interesting to see how UTSA defends that. A couple other players I'd call out for that offense as well. Some of the transfers is they have a running back transfer, Champ Dozier from TCU. He's probably their most electric player, if I had to guess. He dealt with a lot of injury at HCU, so he's kind of on and off the bench as allowed, but he's got some pretty good wiggle to him. He's a pretty good player. He could definitely make some big plays against UTSA. He does have the talent for that, for sure. Their top receiver is an SMU transfer, Calvin Wiggins. He's a pretty good one. Nothing too crazy, but a really solid receiver. And there's also Calvin Hill. That's a name that a lot of UTSA fans will recognize because UTSA has played against him when he was at UTEP as a minor and also when he was at Texas State. So he's a guy who's really familiar with UTSA.
So.
Yep, he's not their starter, but he does get a lot of touches.
Wow. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, they seem to like to throw the ball a decent amount. They actually have a fairly good, I think, distribution between their run game and their pass game. 400 rushing yards on the season, 600 passing yards on the season. Pretty decent distribution there. And you talk about, it'll be interesting how UTSA defends. What are some things that, I don't know, you hope to see from UTSA's defense?
A lot of sacks. HCU's offensive line's bad. They need a lot of work. They get pushed around a lot. That pocket collapses almost instantly. Even against, like when they played Tarleton State, even against FCS competition. Not a lot of time back there for Cutter Stewart. So I would like to see a real breakout game from that defensive front. I'd like to see Jamari Robinson get in there and get a sack. We'll love to see Brandon Brown get back there and cause some havoc. So that's the big thing. Adrian, I also misspoke. I said that Calvin Wiggins was their top receiver. That's just definitely not true. AJ Wilson is their top receiver, but Ishmael Fuller is right behind him, and he's averaging almost 30 yards per catch. So I do remember Ishmael Fuller because he was at North Shore, and I remember wondering if UTSA was going to offer him or not. He ended up at HCU's, had a really, really good career there. I think he's only a sophomore, and he's balling out for them. So number 11, Ishmael Fuller, definitely want to keep an eye on. He's going to have a lot of attachment, I guess, to this UTSA roster coaching staff with all the North Shore ties that UTSA has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, very, very interesting. Actually, Bachtel was a assistant for North Shore at once upon a time.
Okay.
In Galena Park ISD. I don't know if it was Galena Park or North Shore, but
gotcha.
He was down there.
Yeah.
In the early aughts. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say an offense that they've got some playmakers. They have a unique scheme. Very much a work in progress, though.
Yeah, an offensive line is the sore spot there. Okay, how about the Husky defense?
They got some pieces, man. They got some pieces. They play very soft coverage, right? They will play with 2 high safeties almost all the time. They're going to show a lot of looks where there's only one linebacker in the tackle box. So they're very much, bend but don't break, try to keep everything in front of you. and try to kind of lull that offense into throwing that risky pass and getting that interception, right? They're definitely playing for takeaways. They're not going to try to force a 3 and out, right? They're not crazy aggressive. They blitz a decent amount, but they're always going to leave, a lot of coverage back in the secondary to try to prevent those big plays. But they do have some guys that I like. Their cornerback, Ashton Williams, number 4, jumped out to me as a guy who can make some plays. They have a safety, Xavier Tolliver. That's a ball hawk as well. He impressed me a lot. I think he may be one of the best players on this team for them. And then they have a linebacker, Braden Hay. That's the leader for their defense. He showed some solid play as well. Defensive line's okay, but I think their secondary is pretty solid.
Yeah.
So for UTSA, I think it's take what they're giving to you, work that underneath passing game, hit that run attack heavy, right? Try to overpower them, spread out and run into a light tackle box. Out of 10 personnel, 11 personnel, whatever, should be the key to success for the Roadrunners. Just not get greedy, right? And we haven't really seen UTSA have that style on offense. So as long as they kind of play the way that they've played and just execute well and use their talent to their advantage, they should have a pretty productive day on the offense and put up a lot of yards. I think it'll definitely be the highest yardage output of the season. That's pretty safe to say.
Well, I think that those underneath routes are crucial to get this wide receiver group going. That soft kind of coverage feels like just what this group needs to be able to get open and get hit 6-7 yards downfield, be able to turn it up and get some more yards with their legs, maybe break past a couple of things, get their confidence going, get their momentum going, but some easy throws and catches. And maybe that allows just a little bit of rhythm and a little bit of familiarity to be built between Owen and his wide receivers.
Yeah, those hitch routes, those end routes, those track routes, all that stuff should be pretty wide open for HCU, just based off the way they play their coverage. And I want to see some big plays from the receivers. Even if it's not a deep pass, just make that guy miss. You're going to have some open space. And if you can run past the safety, you'll be looking good.
Okay. All right. Anything else on HCU, Jared?
Interesting tidbit. Former UT head coach Charlie Strong, former boss of Jeff Traylor, is on the call for this game on ESPN Plus.
So interesting. Yes, Jeff Traylor famously said whenever he left Gilmer High School for the college football ranks, he said, there's only a couple schools I would ever leave Gilmore for, and one of them called. I have unbelievable faith in Coach Strong, and that was the very first boss of his at the college football level. He was a tight ends coach and special teams coordinator, and incredible.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that broadcast and see what kind of insight, what kind of stories we get. I feel like there'll be some good ones for sure.
Those guys go back. Yeah. Really cool stuff, man.
Yeah.
Really cool stuff. So yeah, shout out Charlie Strong. Jared, what's your final score prediction for this week?
I'm gonna say like Roadrunners 42-10.
Yeah, maybe UTSA can dish out a little bit what they've been taking. I don't even know what the odds for this game would be. I don't even know that any betting odds exist for this game.
Dude, there's always betting odds out there somewhere if you look hard enough.
I haven't pulled up the BetMGM. I haven't pulled up the DraftKings for UTSA HCU. I need to find that. But I will say I like your pick a lot. For the Roadrunners to hang a 40 burger, Jared, I don't know that I have the confidence in our ability to do that quite yet.
Sure.
Even against a Houston Christian University, I haven't seen the aptitude on offense to be able to trust that this team can put up 40 points against anybody.
I got a line for you on FanDuel. Do you want to give your prediction before or after I tell you what the spread is?
I want to hear the line.
All right. I was spot on. It's 35.5 points.
And you had 42-10?
Mm-hmm.
So Jared's got HCU to cover.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I'm going to go HCU 14, Roadrunners 35. I think we win handily. I think HCU scores in garbage time, but I think, this team still has to figure out how to get it going. Kennesaw State should be much, much better than HCU. We did score 3 touchdowns on our first 3 possessions against Kennesaw State. Can we replicate that magic on offense? I don't know, maybe. But I think after these 2 weeks, we just got to figure some things out. We see it get figured out. 35-14 Roadrunners. And then we look forward to really seeing what we're made of against ECU the following week.
Yeah. A few interesting data points that I just pulled off Pro Football Focus is Houston Christian actually has the highest tackling grade in the FCS at 88.2. That is elite. That's like barely any missed tackles. And keep in mind, they played SMU and Tarleton State as well. Tarleton State's a good FCS program. So that's pretty wild. Run defense is really good. Coverage grade's really good. But their pass rushing, run blocking, and pass blocking, the 3 things that are hardest to recruit, are all really, really poor. They're in the low 50s.
Well, maybe UTSA can have some sort of workshop or tackling clinic with the Huskies and learn a little bit of that technique that they're using to get graded so highly. And I would love to ask you, Jared, in contrast to that, what is UTSA's tackling grade in comparison to HCU's, ranking wise or number wise? Yeah.
Yeah, I can get that for you.
If you don't have,
let's see.
Are you okay? You can pull that up. You can pull it up live right here, folks.
Yeah, I can pull it up live. Let's see. I'm going to go to page 3 of 3 first. So we're 129th in the country at a 44.7 tackling grade. But we did beat Tulane and Texas Tech. They're lower than us.
And what was HCU's?
88.
Right.
The scores are out of
slots higher.
Out of 100.
Incredible.
I wonder if HCU tackles in practice.
Twice as good as ours. I wonder, Jared. Great question. Begs to the question. Begs to be pondered. Well, that's fantastic. So, as Jared was mentioning, we do have a massively epic, exciting Patreon episode coming this week about the Pac-12 rumor mill and how that involves UTSA. And remember, folks, for just as little as $5 a month, you can unlock 2 bonus episodes per week. That's 2 Patreon exclusive bonus episodes per week during the football season. That's our Game After Instant Reaction, plus our Patreon bonus episode. Not to mention also Jared's Film Room Studies every single week, recapping play by play his most important moments from the previous game. All of this for as little as $5 a month. If you subscribe to our Patreon, we want to give a big shout out to our big money donors. That's Ben Tovar, the Bunch family, Zach Espericueta, and the San Antonio Podcast Network, Alejandro Benavides, Dan Nerdahl, our host of Around the Burn Bath, Jacob Cavazos, board president for the UTSA Alumni Association, John Nally, Rick Cortez of Rowdy Road Grillers, Summer McDaniel, UTSA, King Bowser, Maddie, and Home Field Apparel, where you can use UTSA Wants Home Field as your discount code to save 15% on your first order. You can also shop for UTSA merch, for game day merch at the Alamo Audible fan shop right there on our website, alamoaudible.com. Thank you very much for tuning in.